September 1st, 1939. The German Reich orders an unprovoked attack on their neighbor state Poland. This marks the beginning of World War II. The United States is in economic turmoil in the beginning of the 20th century. In the latter half of its Great Depression, the country still possesses a 20% unemployment rate. When the war first breaks out, it is financially unachievable for the U.S. to participate. As well, the president aims to respect the previous policy of neutrality set by his forefathers, and considering the distance between America and Europe, the majority of citizens embrace his approach. However, 2 years later, December 7, 1941, would prove to be a poignant day in the American history books. The Japanese Empire carry out an attack on the U.S. military base in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The attack is responsible for 2,403 casualties, as well as sinking and destroying countless military ships and planes. The media is rampant the next day. The New York Times headlines, "Japan wars on U.S. and Britain. Makes sudden attack on Hawaii." Franklin D. Roosevelt signs Executive Order 9066 and pleads to Congress to make the decision permanent, which sees U.S. involvement in World War II. Many civilians remember this day as a reason to go off and fight in World War II, including then 15-year-old Fred Whitaker.
The Russians were so mad at the terrorism of the Germans. They had a general, bright young general, who was going to be in charge of the occupation. And while he was riding through the streets of one of the Czech towns, a couple of guys shot and killed him. If the enemy is not receiving any return fire, they can focus all their attention on shooting these boats that are trying to land. They use anti-aircraft guns, depressed, and blow the boats out of the water. They use machine gun fire to rake the surface of the river. They use tracer bullets, which have a stream, a white or a red stream, that tells the shooter exactly where the bullet is going, so he can correct his fire if he's missing his target.
3 years later, when Fred Whitaker turns 18, he decides to continue his family's history of service. Whitaker trains to become a rifleman at Fort Benning, Georgia, doing basic training there for 13 weeks. In order to join the infantry, Whitaker had to hit his target more than 70% of the time. In training, Fred hits 183 out of 200 targets, giving him an accuracy of 91.5% and rank of expert, which prompts his stationing in Europe.
Now, every commanding officer has a grid map of the area that he is involved in. And he calls back to artillery. And the artillery have these maps too. And these little sections are named like A6, B21, Z12, all these combinations. And they read off these letters and numbers carefully. And the artillery officer reads them back to them. And if it isn't exact, they do it again, because they don't know what they're going to hit. It's all blind firing as far as the artillery is concerned. So these numbers and letters have to be exact. So moments later, the artillery shells start landing, and we lose some men, but we are dug in, and the enemy is on above ground, so they are driven off. Now that battle continued for about 10 days, but we held. But we lost 800 men out of 1,000.
Whitaker's first combat experience is during the Allied invasion of Saarland. Whitaker survives a German artillery shell attack. However, 10 of his compatriots aren't as lucky. Whitaker remembers walking by a beautifully shaped tree, only to discover that its limbs are covered with the flesh and clothing of American soldiers.
Now, right next to them, I had noticed a beautiful deciduous tree. It had lost its leaves, but it was beautifully formed, and I was struck by that. Then after I looked up, I thought, my God, after I realized these men had been blown to bits, I thought, what happened to that tree? That's that ugly looking tree. And it dawned on me, that tree was filled with the flesh and fabric of those 8 to 10 men. Those men are missing in action.
While stationed in Belgian Ardennes, Fred Whitaker is subject to the harshest of what winter has to offer. During battle, Whitaker spots a Belgian dug foxhole and decides to take cover in it. He jumps carelessly, thinking the foxhole is abandoned, but to his surprise, there's a German soldier right in front of him.
So the small arms fire is kind of light. So I looked down, probably about 2 or 3 houses down on the street, and I see a foxhole, and I said, I think I can get there. So I leap out of the foxhole, run in a crouch, and as I get to the foxhole, I look down, and my God, there's a German soldier in the foxhole. If I told you I've never been more alert my whole life, would you believe me? I hope you would, because I was never more alert at that moment. And when I was going flying through the air, there's no question I was going to end up in the foxhole because I was airborne. And this soldier is facing north. I'm coming from the west. Then an amazing thing happened to me. My eyes were never more clear. My hearing was the most acute it's ever been. I never felt stronger in my whole life.
Whitaker's last two military campaigns are in the Rhineland and Central Europe. In the Rhineland campaign, General Patton's troops had to cross the Rhine River.
The river crossings, that's the Rhineland campaign. River crossings are very difficult because you cannot fire at the enemy when you're on a boat. And you always want to cross the river at night so they can't see you. But the enemy was not stupid. They figured out a way to make it look like midday. We were crossing the Moselle River. We looked across there, and the Germans had printed, "See Germany and die." Well, Americans are kind of creative, and so when they did get across, they blotted out the word and it just said, "See Germany die." And we thought that was a much better sentence. The Rhine River. Now the Rhine River starts in Switzerland, goes up to the Baltic. It's a powerful river. It flows very rapidly. It's about 3 football fields wide. So you got to do a lot of paddling to get to the other side. But when you have a current like that, what you have to do is tow the boat into the current, because otherwise it'll take you downstream and you won't be able to land at the point you're supposed to land. So you're out there on the water longer than you wanted to be. Now, as I said, we were going to cross at night. It took a few days before we were ready.
Whitaker and the American troops seize the German town of Olsnitz. He and another soldier patrol through the town and spot a Fotografenmeister. Whitaker notices the opportunity and forces the reluctant man to take his picture. Whitaker also forces a man to give up his binoculars and a German family out of their home. He gives the man his binoculars back, but doesn't give up the comfortable bed, as it is too good to pass up.
We get to the square, and I look over there, and there's a sign that says, Fotografenmeister. Oh, I say, Bill, this is a great chance to have our picture taken during the war. And I said, I'm going to have a picture taken by the Germans, by the enemy, while the war is on. So I get over, I knock on the door, no answer. I pound on the door, no answer. I take my rifle butt and crash it into the door. He comes down and he said, I'm closed. Now I asked the students, what do we do? They say, well, make them take your picture. Well, you can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do.
Fred Whitaker is a truly honorable and courageous man. He is rightfully awarded with 5 honor medals, 4 service medals, and 5 foreign decorations, including the French Legion of Honor, France's highest honor. We must be thankful for Fred Whitaker not only for his service, but his willingness to share his stories to the new generations. Our group was privileged to listen and pass on Mr. Whitaker's experience.